Hi guys, and welcome back to the PT Education Podcast. It's episode 105. We are in a special location today, aren't we, Dan?
We are, once again. Yeah, we'll take two. Yeah, we are. We're back up in our London podcast studio, which we're always excited to come to. So sunny today, which is always nice because it's been fucking raining like every day. So I'm just sick of that. So the fact it's nice and sunny, we're up in London is amazing. How are you, mate?
I'm doing well, mate. Yeah, excited to be in London. I love to be in a different environment, different location. It's always good for my mental health, I feel. Just getting out of the sort of day-to-day routine, mixing things up. And we are here not just to chat to each other, are we?
No.
If people are watching on YouTube, this is recorded, isn't it? So people can see our lovely, handsome faces. But it isn't just our two handsome faces. We have a handsome guest with us, Johnny Lawrence. Thank you for coming on, mate. Really appreciate it. Great to see you. You were on episode 41 back in the day via Zoom. So it's nice to meet you in person. And yeah, thanks for being here, mate.
I'm just chuffed that I got called handsome, to be honest.
Yeah, you do, yeah. I mean, it's all relative. It's compared to me and Dan. So.
Do I have to buy dinner for you? Is that what it is? Do I owe you dinner now?
Yeah, normally I give very few compliments out, Johnny. So yeah, but yeah, Johnny, how you doing? How are you today?
I'm all right. Yeah, I mean, like I was saying to you before we pressed record, I've been in London for the week. Had some interesting experiences. I've had a lot of fun. I've met a lot of people. Something really struck me this week, actually. I was meeting some people, friends, right? As well as business acquaintances and all them different things. But I've met a couple of friends and I was really looking forward to seeing them. And they're really important people to me. And I realized that I haven't known them that long. I've only known them like a year, 2 years. And it made me think, wow, you know, so many people, they stay friends with people because they've been friends with them since they were 2 or since they were 10 or whatever, or they went to college with them. And actually, there's people that you meet that are attracted to the person that you are now.
Yeah.
And actually, there's a lot of your old friends that are keep trying to pull you back to how you don't want to be or how you used to be or how they want you to be. And I thought, how lovely that I get to come and meet some of these people here in London that I haven't known. And what's great is that I'm finding things out about them. You know, like I was met with someone last night and I found out loads of stuff about them and how they met their partner and how they started business and how an old business venture didn't go the way they want and what they learned from it. And it was really cool. So, you know.
It's funny you bring that up. I spoke to a friend recently, actually, and how often we confuse the depth of a relationship with the length of a relationship. And a lot is exactly the point you were just saying there, because we were discussing how he's a good friend of mine, has been for a long time, but in the same way that you mentioned, I've got other friends that I've known for a long, long time, but actually I have a much deeper connection, say, with James, who I haven't known as long, but the depth of our relationship is a lot deeper than some of them, even though the length of their relationship is a really interesting point, actually.
Well, it's funny. I had to challenge a client once on something he said to me. He said that he'd been in this industry or the industry that he was in for 20 years. He had 20 years experience. And I said to him, that's interesting. I said, that's interesting. Tell me about that. And then he told me about it. But the way I heard it, it wasn't that he had 20 years experience. It's that he had 1 year's experience repeated 20 times. And I was like, you know what? Like some friends, like you get to like, part with them and that's it. There's no more depth there. You can't go any deeper. But some people, you're going deeper and deeper and deeper over a course of 20 years. That's a real friend, man. When you're with them through the bad times, you're with them through the good times, you know. Like when my friends are going through bad times, I want them to call me. When they're going through good times, I want them to call me. Whatever's going on, call me, you know. And there's depth there. There's depth there. And I can recall times where they've done this and they've done that, and that can be helpful. To remind someone, hey, look, you're all right. You can go and do that talk. Remember when you did that thing? Oh, yeah, I forgot about that. See, that's depth, you know, without that history, that real history where I'm listening and I'm paying attention to what they're doing and not making everything about me. That's
I mean, we'll talk about relationships here, aren't we? Whether they're friendships, whether they're romantic relationships. Something we talk a lot about in the podcast is relationships, because such a massive part of our health, our well-being is dictated by the quality of our relationships. And some relationships just fade away as we grow and develop. You know, a big part of our podcast and yours as well, Johnny, is about personal growth, personal development. And as you're doing that and you challenge yourself, your lens starts to change and you start to change. And some people will really come along with you on that journey and some people won't. And we were talking about off air, won't we, about kind of sometimes you have to be able to kind of grow and develop. And that means maybe letting some people go and bringing some people closer to you. And it's a difficult thing to do, but it's a part of personal growth, I think.
There's a story that I love. I've forgotten what it's called, but I call it Plato's Cave because it's about Plato. Have you heard that one?
We were chatting about it on our Zoom call.
Yeah. So shall I say it again anyway?
Yeah.
So it's about Plato and a selection of people that are chained up in a cave, and all they know is this cave. That everything in the cave is all they've ever seen, all they've ever experienced, all they've ever known. They're chained up in this cave, and there's a little fire, and the flickering of the fire and their shadows and their silhouettes is what they have for entertainment. They have water in there, and there's a degree of food in there. And then one day Plato escapes, and he finds an opening in the cave, and he goes outside, and he sees the rest of the world, and he thinks, wow, look, there's food running around, there's food growing on trees, there's water, this is incredible, there's sunlight, this is amazing. And he's excited, right? So he goes back in the cave, and he tells everybody in the cave. They're terrified. They're like, what are you talking about? They can't fathom or comprehend what he's talking about. All it's doing is scaring the hell out of them. So they want him to stop talking. They're encouraging him to shut up. They're almost telling him to go away. So now Plato's got this decision. He's like, do I go outside knowing it's real, but leaving everybody I know and love? Or do I go back inside with everybody I know and love, knowing that it's not real? And that is the decision that quite often comes to us when we develop ourselves. We start to fall out of alignment with the people that we know in our life, and we make excuses for them for a little while, right? And we go, oh yeah, this, and oh yeah, that. And we try and encourage them to come to where we are because we love what we found out and we love where we are, but they don't want to. And we keep trying to force that relationship and it's not working. And when that happens, all we're doing is building resentment. So it's not that you have to end a friendship. It's just that sometimes you just have to let things fizzle out, you know, and you have to make that decision. Okay, I know and love you. You're familiar, you're comfortable, but you might not be good for me because I know what's real now. I'm going to go out the cave, you know? So I don't know, maybe that isn't the right example, but it felt like it. You know?
It's a beautiful example. So it's really good. I mean, on the personal level, have you found that yourself within your own journey, within your own relationships?
Yeah, that story, the reason I tell it, and I haven't told it in a while actually, but I tell it a lot when it comes to sobriety. So if somebody's having challenges around addiction of whatever form, as they move away, because inevitably they, you know, a lot of the time, if say someone's got, like, more relevant to you guys, somebody that's got a relationship with food that's not healthy, most of the time that is, they've got a friendship group that are doing the same things. Maybe they go out every Friday for a curry, you know, whatever it is. And that's when you find yourself, you know, in a situation where if you go out with those people and you're starting to lose weight, then they don't like that. And I mean, I think I said that on the last podcast, didn't I, that we did together, and they challenge you on that. So for me, I've had to make a lot of decisions around friends where I'm like, okay, every time I go out with you, you basically shame me and you tell me I'm boring, or you tell me this, or you tell me that. But at the same time, they're doing it hidden with confidence. Oh, look at your social media, it's doing really well. And oh, you had that guest on the podcast. It's like, so confused. It's like, friends shouldn't be that complicated, you know? So I don't say, hey, I'm not going to see you anymore. Actually, that's not true. I have said no to a few things like stag do's. I mean, being sober on a sofa doesn't sound hugely fun, does it? You know, most of the time you're on your own in the day while everyone's dying in bed, you know? But you know, I've had to say no to a few things, and there's been a few friendships where they haven't called me and I haven't called them, you know, and that's the way it's had to go. And maybe one day they'll understand why I had to make decisions that I did around my sobriety, you know, and why I wanted to be sober.
I think it's just such a key point. So many people listening to this can relate to, is where people who listen to this are probably into their growth and development. And it's really difficult when you've got a relationship, especially if it's like a close one, like a romantic one, and your lens sort of changes. You kind of open Pandora's box. You can see things differently as you learn more about yourself, more about psychology. And it's a difficult place to kind of walk forward in, because you're like, I'm learning this and I can see things in this relationship dynamic that I couldn't see before. What would be your advice, Johnny, to people who kind of are starting to see things, are starting to open things up, learn more about themselves, but they're struggling a little bit with their relationship, they're struggling to communicate it? What would be your kind of advice to those people?
Well, you know me, I don't give advice. I offer perspective occasionally. No, but I think first and foremost, don't apply meaning to things too soon. You know, you never really know what something means until you know what it means. And when you know what it means, you will really know, you know, you won't be guessing anymore. Sometimes bad things happen and we think, yeah, of course, they were painful in the moment, emotionally or physically. But in the long term, you have this playful moment with the universe where you're like, actually glad that happened now because I met this person, or I met my partner, or this business started, or whatever. So that's the first thing. And the second thing is be patient and be willing to accept what's true. Sometimes there are things that are true, and we don't want them to be. So we start to create these false narratives about things, and then we start to build a life of lies and wonder why things are going wrong.
Yeah,
But
absolutely.
the problem with that is once you start building that life of lies, inevitably you have this moment where you feel as if you're having a breakdown, but you're not having a breakdown, you're having a breakthrough, because you've lied to yourself for such a long time that all of a sudden you cannot help but see what is true and what is real. And that causes a huge shock, a really huge shock, a shock that's so profound that it feels like you're having a breakdown. You feel unstable, you feel anxious, you don't feel like reality is real anymore. Everything you've ever known doesn't feel real anymore because it was a lie. Because you told yourself a lie, because you were going through such a hard situation that you had to, in order to accept the reality that you wasn't willing to accept. So there's with friends and people, you just got to be patient and hope that they come to the conclusion that they need to make some changes, or maybe they just need to accept you. An interesting example of that would be, I'm trying to think whether I should say this or not, but I'll just drink this.
Have a sip of water.
Think about it.
Yeah, there was a moment.
This will be our last podcast.
Yeah. Well, it's more. The danger's more for me because I'm going to mention my wife, and she's going to.
Oh, well.
Yeah, we'll never tell her about this podcast. No, but she once said to me, in a moment of emotion, I didn't sign up for Sober Johnny. And I was really hurt. I was like, wow, that's really supportive. But what I realized now through hindsight is I made that moment about me, when actually that's a fair comment. She didn't. I made the change. And I wasn't accepting that she had to adjust to my decision. She always liked going out for a bottle of wine with me. She always liked putting the log burner on, putting a nice movie on and sharing a bottle of wine together. That's what she liked doing. To her, that was how she saw the situation. What she wasn't aware of is how much it tormented me, and what I'm saying is there's some grief there. There's some grief there. There's some mourning there for the person that she fell in love with. And I had to accept that, I had to accept that there's going to be an adjustment period. You can't just make a decision like that and expect everyone just to get on board with it. That's not fair, and I had to realize that. And that was my side of it. At the same time, though, she also had to work on the fact that she had to accept that I was this person and that was going to be this person. There's also the fact that, potentially I said this before, right? Oh, I'm going to go sober. Okay, Johnny. Yeah. So there's that too. There's always many things going on, and what we tend to do, and it's reasonable and it's fair and it's understandable, is that we make a lot of stuff about ourselves, because the truth is we have a voice in our head that's our own, right? But we also listen to that voice as well, which means that actually it's all about us all the time. That sounds really like, wow, that's narcissistic. But of course it is. We're always trying to make sense and meaning about how something means and feels to us. That makes perfect sense. So a lot of the time when someone says something, we make a complete meaning out of it that just wasn't there, Yeah. So when she said, I didn't sign up for Sober Johnny, she was right. And that's why it hurt. Quite a lot of the time, the things that hurt us are the things that are kind of true. That's why they hurt us.
Yeah,
and if you've been doing the other thing, which is building a narrative of lies, when someone tells the truth, don't say that, because then I've got to admit it and I don't want to, so it can be complicated. So I don't know if that answers the question, to be honest.
Really interesting. But it's a really interesting story, actually, a really interesting perspective to understand that.
Yeah.
Even if you're doing something the best for yourself in that moment, the implications or the changes it is for the people around you as well, and how they've got to come and deal with that. And almost like you say, like a moment of grief, which sounds dramatic, but it's not, is it? Because if there's going to be a big change, I think it's really a really important point, actually, for any big decision.
I think people think grief is always about death. It's not. It's about loss. It's about a loss of something that's important to you. And the fact is, and again, this might sound dramatic, but, when somebody passes away, unfortunately, they will never walk into the room and say hello to you. You will never get a text message from them again. They are gone. And that is awful. And that is so difficult to accept. However, when somebody changes, like me, I change. I'm not drinking anymore. I'm not doing the things I used to do, good or bad. You've got this person walking around who's not the same, but they look the same and they sound the same, but they're not. There's a loss there. And it's kind of incomprehensible in a way, because it's like, I'm glad you're here, but I wish you were here like you was, but you're not. And I don't know what to do. And it's stressful, right? So it's a really difficult situation to get your head around.
I actually think about some clients with this, and where they're, I'm thinking about one in particular whose group around them are changing because they're growing up. So they're starting to have kids. The things they want to do and where they're going to spend their time is changing versus where this person's at. And you can tell that there's some grief there for the lifestyle that he had with the people he was surrounded by, because they're moving on. Maybe he's not quite ready to move on yet, and he feels like he's losing something. And actually you explaining that just made me think of him and actually understand his point of view more.
Well, he's also making it, and this is not a criticism, this is an observation. He's probably making it a bit about him as well. Like, so not only has he got the loss, he's also then thinking, well, should I be doing that too? Should I have a partner? Should I have children? Should I get a grown-up job? You know, all those things, you know? So it's terrible. That's why, again, those moments feel like a breakdown, but they're a breakthrough. You're being called to look at something in your life that you don't want to look at, that maybe you're not ready to let go of, you know? And that's difficult, man. That's really difficult. And that's why it's always nice to have somebody to talk to. Like we were saying before, the way we organize our mind is through conversation. So if you find yourself having a conversation with yourself, then that's not going to work, you know, because your ego is going to step in and go, no, you're all right. You know, let's stay where we're comfortable. Yeah. Let's not go over there. You know, that's really uncomfortable. I was working with someone the other day, and, you know, they were feeling called to go back to their old behavior and their old lifestyle because it was so familiar. It was so familiar, which offered them comfort. And I'm trying to encourage them to go towards discomfort, which is going to be good for them in the end, because eventually they'll become comfortable there. Let's hope. But in this moment, they deliberately are moving towards discomfort, and it doesn't make sense to the ego. The ego's going, no, this is ludicrous. This is dangerous. This could happen. That could happen. And it's like, it could. It probably won't know. You know, and it's like the choice, isn't it? Like we were talking about before. But yeah, I've forgotten if that's part of
No, I mean, I think as human beings, we create any narrative we can to avoid discomfort.
Yeah.
And change.
Which makes sense.
Yeah, it makes perfect sense. And we all need compassion for ourselves and for others there. I think listening to you two chat there, I can hear empathy from both perspectives, the people who can see the change and the people who are changing themselves. It's difficult for both sides. And I think that's the power of coaching, or having a good friend to chat to, a good partner, where you can just air those thoughts. And some of those thoughts will be totally irrational, and some of that you're like, I'm just coming up with my normal bollocks again. Here I go again, and then you sort of bring yourself back into it, getting a bit of clarity. And me and Dan will sort of do that. We'll air our thoughts, or I've done that in therapy, or done that with people close to me, and then you can kind of get out of that irrational narrative. And as you talked about, Johnny, even on the last podcast, was to check in and go, is that truthful what I'm saying? How much truth is there in that story? And just give it some time, give it some focus, ask yourself some questions. Me and Dan were chatting on the train on the way down, and Dan was doing some reflection about things, and you were thinking deeply, weren't you, about am I really going to reflect on this? Or I'm going to give myself a surface level answer. Your first answer was very surface level, then you sort of delved a little bit deeper. And I think we've all got areas of our life that probably we want to tweak, modify, or potentially change. That is hard, and it's difficult because, as you said, it takes some effort to realise there's going to be some loss. I'm losing something. You can't have change without some loss. And loss will mean letting go of something, and will mean some grief. And I think we think about behaviour changes and, okay, let's come up with the strategies and the behaviours to move forward, which I'm a massive fan of. But we also have to come to a place of accepting what we're going to leave behind. That might be people, that might be locations, work, partners, whatever. There's something that's going to be lost. And I think that's something we need to look at as well.
Yeah, I mean, I'm going through something similar right now. Is that, you know, for my definition of success, there's more speaking opportunities. So I'm traveling and I'm speaking in different places, and there's potential for me to do that out of the country this year, which is like, whoa, that's bad, you know. But at the same time, what I never thought was, oh, that's a little bit less time with my kids. And it's like, ouch. And all of a sudden, that's a really strong reason for me not to do it, you know, and I didn't know what to do about that, you know. And also when you become successful and potentially that happens in the public eye, that comes with stuff that maybe you've never considered before. Like, you know, what does it mean if you're going to, you know, like, for example, I'm struggling to write my book at the moment, and there's procrastination going on. Now I know that means I'm scared of something. And I've been telling myself, oh, maybe I'm scared that I'm going to fail. Maybe no one's going to read my book. And then I've handed it to people and said, you know, can you read a couple of these chapters and tell me what you think? And they've gone, this is amazing. And I've gone, oh shit, does that mean it's going to be really successful? What does that mean? Oh my God. Now I don't know if it's going to be successful or not. I'm not going to be arrogant enough to make a judgment on that. That's not for me to decide. But what if it is? You know, I could get anxious about that if I really wanted to. I could also get anxious about failure too. So to me, it's kind of like, well, okay, this feels a little bit like a loss situation here, but it's also a win-win situation. It's complicated, you know, but you can see how that can easily cause procrastination, because that's going to be a fear of some kind, of fear of success or a fear of failure. And when it's both, that's even harder, you know. So
you often need the failure for the success as well. And
dude, I'm a person that learns from touching the flame. You know, you can tell me all day long the flame is hot. I'll go, okay. And then one day I'll go like that and go, and I'll never touch it again, but I will learn, you know.
I think with the touching the flame thing, I think it makes me think about the value we get from pain, the value we get from failure, loss, grief, in different shapes and form in our life, as we're alluding to. There's always something we can take valuable from that.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it's been able to sort of see the value in, and I sometimes find the biggest pain that I've experienced in my life, the more value there is to get through. It's a process of me finding the value and seeing the meaning in that thing that happened to me. But I'm like, I can find that meaning. I can see how that has made me who I am. I can see the lessons that have been learned. I can see the value in that pain. And sometimes the bigger the pain, the bigger the opportunity for growth. But we, as we're saying, we avoid that pain so often, and actually that limits our growth.
Do you know, I took that a step further. It hasn't been 3 months. It's been longer than that since I've last did it. But I always check in with my values, right? Just to see if they've changed. Because if I start to feel a feeling of unalignment, I'm like, what's that about? Maybe my values have changed slightly. And it was last year I come to realize that one of my values, it's going to sound so sadistic, but is suffering. Because suffering has given me so much. It really has. Suffering has given me so much. Would I be on this podcast if I hadn't have gone through domestic violence and abuse as a kid? I don't know. Would I have gone through this podcast? Would I be invited to this podcast if I hadn't had an experience of addiction? I don't know. You know, and there was many subsequent suffering moments throughout all of that, not just addiction. There was many points of suffering within that, you know, and, you know, some of those moments I'm like, I can't help but say I wouldn't take them back. Would I choose them? No, of course I wouldn't. But would I take them back? No, because that was the only way Johnny was going to learn that, you know, and so to me, suffering has to be a value for me, you know, and the reason why that's important is because it signals to me, wait a minute, are you doing this to avoid the suffering? Are you doing this to avoid the discomfort? You know, Johnny, that's where the learning is. So lean in. And it's hard. Lean into suffering. Don't be an idiot. Well, truth, that's where I've learned some of my biggest lessons in life, is in suffering. So it's become a value. You know, and I do value sessions with people, and it always makes me laugh. We always start with, honesty. I'm like, yeah, do you know what's not a value? People never say, I love being lied to. So let's just put honesty as a standard, like breathing. Yeah. We kind of value honesty. Of course we do, you know. Yeah. You know, integrity, you know, that sort of stuff, you know. So we want to get to the real values. And what are the real values? Well, some people might want power and influence. And now all of a sudden you sound like a Bond villain. But hang on, wait, what's the right question? The right question is, what do you want power and influence for? Well, I want power and influence for when I walk past this homeless person, I have the power and influence to do something about it. Right. Now I got context and I understand, you know. So understanding why we want the values, the purpose of the values, what's driving the values is important too. So, you know, if I just dropped in there, I want, one of my values is suffering, you're going to think, wow, this guy's a bit kinky. You know, when actually that's not true at all.
Well, maybe, Johnny.
Moving on.
That's podcast that holds its own. I've lost a train of thought now, that image.
Wow, it's an image now.
Oh, yeah. We'll leave him tell now.
Yeah. Get a curtain for this guy.
The one thing I was going to say is, it's so true, isn't it, that the only way you can be the person you are now is to gone through what you've gone through so far, because any deviation from that would have led you to be a different person than you are now. Yeah. So if you are happy with the person you are now, the direction you're going, it's everything in your life so far that's got you to this point. Is that something you'd sort of agree with, good or bad?
What would I write about in my book if I hadn't had the experiences I've got? You know, my book is about yes, it's about self-development. There's a model in the book that I've copyrighted now because so many people have told me it's a good one. So I'm like, okay, well, see what happens. Yeah. And it is interesting writing a book because you have all of these thoughts and these methods, like you guys, the way that you train people and work with people, you just do it. And that's what makes you good. We were talking about it before. That's what makes you so exceptional, at what you do. But then I ask you to talk about it, and you have to put that into some sort of formula or framework in order to make it make sense. Then you write about it. And that's even, to write about one of the most significant experiences I've had recently was I chose in my book to write about an experience that I had when I was a kid to do with domestic violence. Now, when you speak about it, when you start simpler, when you think about it, it's one thing. When you speak about it is another thing, but when you write it down and you use those descriptive words and you've got all that time to work out what makes sense and what doesn't so that you're writing it out, that was triggering. As an experience with my sister that I remember, and I remember, I won't get too dark, but what I do remember is a lot of blood and a lot of tears. And I remember that as a memory from when I was very young, but then I had to kind of make it make sense as part of a story. Otherwise, what are we reading here? And it was like, whoa, and and that's why I think journaling can be so valuable, because it helps you make sense of stuff. It gets that thought out of your head. And when you read it, and if it doesn't make sense, then there's a reason why it doesn't make sense. Maybe there's something you're ignoring, and that's valuable too. So yeah, writing that book and having those experiences written down made me sort of, I can't say I was grateful for it. It might be a step too far for that particular experience, but boy, did I learn a lot from it. I really did.
Seeing those words written down on the page. I remember when I did my counselling course, after each week, they were like, we want you to journal and you're going to get assessed on your journey. That was actually part of the course. At first I was a bit like, writing, I don't particularly like writing. It's not my strongest forte here. And as I started to go through the process, I realised that actually I was starting to really open up a few deeper paths within my brain. As I was writing stuff down, I was making me reflect, making me think about stuff, making me see different perspectives, and open some doors within my own psychology that I don't think I would have thought about if I wasn't writing it down. And then combining that sort of experience with the knowledge on the course, as we said before, that's where you build wisdom, isn't it? It's actually the experiences that you're going through in life with the education, and you can use that wisdom. And I think that's something that you do, Johnny. As I listen to you talk, you're using your wisdom, your previous experiences, and using that to offer value to other people, whether you're thinking about your previous traumas, but also just listening to you talk about day to day. You're finding value in stories day to day and using that to paint a picture and educate people. And I think that's such a valuable skill, to see value in our past, but value in our lives all the time, and little challenges and little obstacles and little triggers that happen, and reflect on those and learn about ourselves, and then be able to sort of translate that to other people is such a valuable skill. And I think it's something that I really sort of admire in you, because it's a skill you've managed to do great wonders with, I think.
Oh, thanks for that. I appreciate that. And I had a similar experience with the counselling thing as well. I used to get these notes every week, fill out your journal. And I'm like, writing this stuff down. And then it's funny, isn't it? As soon as you put pen to paper and you start writing or you start typing, you only intend to do a paragraph, and then before you know it, you've done a page. And then you read it back and you're like, isn't it funny how you can write something and not know it at the same time? It's just like, wow, I didn't realize I felt like that. Well, there you go. Wonder why we're doing this exercise.
It's almost like trying to get into your sort of subconscious a little bit. Lots of things that our conscious brain just isn't aware of day to day. We only stay in this kind of conscious place, and having a good conversation, a deep conversation, journaling, therapy, coaching, you start to have a little look at what's beneath the surface. And we've all got stuff that we're wrestling with and we're not aware of. This kind of almost day to day is like a blind spot. You're not able to see
exactly like that.
As soon as you open the door to that blind spot, you're like, I can see that totally differently now. I've now got a different lens on this relationship, and I've got a different lens on this behavior. And then we get to move forward. And it's really hard to kind of carve that time out in life. I say hard, maybe I'll reframe that. It can be challenging to make the time and prioritize the time to work on this stuff. There's a resistance because there's 1,000 things to do. There's 1,000 distractions in life, We're all busy. We've all got things to do. But realizing that if personal growth, if self-development is important to me, we have to find that time.
Yeah. I mean, I'm fascinated about something at the moment. My part of my history is in health science. And you know, I can't ever help but feel that the human body is this incredible machine, and everything has been thought about. You know, our bodies know what to do. It's only us that gets in the way of it. And one of the things that fascinates me at the moment, really does, and it's something that I feel like I will do something about one day, maybe I'll fund some research on it, or find some research, it's probably already been done, is crying. I find crying interesting. The body has this mechanism for us to release emotion, but yet we've conditioned ourselves as a society, or humans, to say you shouldn't cry. I heard someone in a pub the other day shouting at their son saying, "Stop crying. Are you a girl? You sound like a girl. You're being a girl. Stop crying." I was like, wow, these kids, they know what to do. They haven't got a conditioning of life that tells us not to cry. You're telling this kid not to cry. I had something hard happen to me a little while back, and I've had a very difficult relationship with crying my whole life, because my dad used to hurt me. And when I started crying, it used to make him feel bad. So he would say, "I'm going to keep hitting you till you stop crying." So I taught myself to stop crying. So as an adult, that means that, you know, if I see a sad film, I don't cry. If someone delivers bad news to me, I don't cry. I never cry. Not because I don't want to, because I've taught myself not to. So around this time, I had this overwhelming compulsion to cry. I needed to. I know I needed to. You don't choose to cry. Crying happens. If something sad happens and you want to cry, you cry. You don't think, "Oh, I'm going to schedule that in my phone. I'm going to cry." You know, but this is what I had to do, actually. I had to say to myself, right, and it's part of what formed my anger course, like allowing yourself to have an anger experience. It's going to happen anyway. It just might happen in a supermarket car park instead, you know. So I would sit in my garage on my own and I'd play a song, because music is emotive for me. Music's always been a real gets me, you know. And there's this one song by Johnny Cash called "Hurt." And I played that song once and I could feel it. And then the second time I could feel it. And the third time I couldn't stop crying. But man, I felt better. I felt so much better afterwards. So much so that it had the potential to be addictive. I'd be like, right, I'm just off to cry in the garage. You know, but another thing happened as well. I was very aware that I didn't want my children to see it. Now, there's part of that that's responsible, and there's another part of that that isn't. Your children should see you cry, especially as a man, as a father. But at the same time, there's an element of scaring them too. So you got to get that balance right, you know. But crying is a mechanism that the body has, I believe, to release emotion. Otherwise, why does it always come up when we feel emotional? Yeah. I'm absolutely fascinated by it, and I'd love to know more about it. So one day I'm going to have to look into it, I think.
It's funny, isn't it? It's one of the things I've never really thought about it. It's funny when someone points something out that you just take for granted as something that happens, and actually stop and apply some thought to why and how and what's the reason. Because everything the body does, there is a reason behind it. Absolutely. Otherwise, we wouldn't be part of how we are.
Yeah, yeah.
But it's only when you stop and think, as someone points out, that would be a really interesting thing to look deeper at. Yeah. But as you say, with society now, it's almost gone so far the other way, hasn't it? I don't know, especially it feels like as men that you're conditioned not to the point where very few times you actually do.
Yeah, I mean, I've seen it where been in a group of men, and, you know, I find that tears come easier for men in sporting moments.
Well,
yeah, you know,
yeah. Like a hike. We were talking about the Euros, weren't we, on the way in? And that's an interesting point.
Yeah, it comes for, you know, that's maybe there's something in that potentially. But then you always get that one guy that goes, "Are you crying?" And it's like, no, it's just leaking from my eyes. It's just funny to me, like, you know, how we deal with that dynamic. The body clearly knows what to do. You know, it knows exactly what to do. That's why you cry. There's something there. I don't know what it is. Maybe someone has done the research. I don't know, but I haven't looked into it really. It's just been a recent fascination.
Just made me think of it when you said there, because my instantly when you were talking about crying is when you're sad. But of course, people cry when they're happy.
They do.
So it is a release of emotion on both ends of the spectrum, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. And that's why it's fascinating me. See, now I've got you on
it. You got me. Yeah. I'm coming in on it as well.
Well, I think the release of emotion is a really good way to describe it. And we've talked a lot about emotions on the podcast, and it's something that I think I've become more and more interested in as well, in my personal life as much as professional life. And yeah, I can relate to having shut enough from crying from a sort of a young age, really, and something I still struggle with, to be fair.
It's celebrated, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, and you think of it, for me, thinking of it as like a sign of weakness, definitely, 100%. I still trying to sort of maybe break that down now, I would say. And we're talking about like releasing emotions. And I remember I think I shared this in the podcast when I was chatting last year about doing a sound bath or a few sound baths. I was going through my own sort of different ways of maybe releasing emotions and getting into this sort of subconscious. And so many different ways of doing it. You talked about playing some Johnny Cash music. There could be coaching, therapy. There's a whole host of options. I sort of experimented with a few different things last year, and one was sound baths. And so sound baths and breath work, actually. And it's actually the breath work where I got to a deeper level with my emotions. So we were kind of coming out of this kind of breath work after about an hour. And the music, and again, it's music as well. So sort of sad music was playing, and suddenly I felt this kind of like lump in my throat. I was like, what's this? This is unfamiliar. And literally I could feel myself sort of welling up, and I had to kind of understand where that emotion was coming from, and I kind of unpeeled those layers and was aware of what I was letting go of, something that actually my body was holding on to. That tension, that emotional sadness, that grief from my past that I hadn't really sort of let go of, and it was still sitting with me. And I thought, I've moved on with that. I've been out with the boys, had a few beers.
Such a bloke thing to do. Nailed that.
You're jokes. Fine, mate. I'm all good. There wasn't sort of I had that real safe space with people where we'd done this breath work. The instructor guided us for a 4 hour of breath. So I had that physiological kind of release. I had the music, I had a combination of so many factors. And just at that moment, at that time, I could just feel these kind of tears coming out. And the instructor was like, how are you? I said, well, I don't often admit to this, to be fair, but I welled up quite a lot. And I had to kind of re-reflect on why that was. And I think we need to be open-minded with how we can release emotion, and it's going to look different for different people. I think as a man, I can think it's something that I've really struggled with and still do, but I found that really beneficial last year, and it really helped kind of maybe help me move forward and help my body stop my body kind of hanging on to this kind of internal tension that I didn't even know I had.
Yeah, man. Yeah, that's a really powerful story and speaks volumes, because you didn't choose that, did you? It just happened. And this is what I mean. It's an involuntary thing that we have, like breathing, like you don't, I was speaking to a breathwork specialist on the podcast, and he said, like, it's the only essential function that we can control. And I was like, wow, I've never thought of it like that. Yeah, that's exactly right. And breathing shows up in all of our emotions, doesn't it? Like heavy breathing and holding your breath and all these different things. It all is even part of our language and the way we communicate in some cases. But it's a powerful story, man. And it's like that emotion is it's all about emotions. And that's why, with me, I go into different places and deal with people, and people go, oh, how do you know so much about this and so much about that? And I say, I don't, because there's one commonality in most situations, and it's people. And if there's people, there's emotions. Even the lack of emotion suggests emotion, right? So it's like
suppressed emotions.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
and it's like you may potentially, I don't know this, but you suppress that emotion. And there's something about vibrations as well. Like we are vibrational beings. It gets a little bit out there once you start talking about that. And we have emotions, and you had all the perfect things there. You had the breath work, you had the music and the vibrations, and then obviously the emotions are there, and it just came up, and you had that moment of wanting to cry, or crying, whichever.
It's that kind of compassion for ourselves as well. And I think the more difficult the time that we're experiencing, the more we need to give ourselves time to process stuff. It's a real journey that can take different lengths of time for different people. But if you think you've gone through something really difficult in your life and you're going to get over that a week later, no matter what narrative you give yourself, you haven't, even a month later, you're going to need to do some work, I feel. Anyway, that'd be my bias. When you've gone through these times, Johnny, in your life, these kind of difficult situations, these kind of darker times, how have you kind of navigated them? How have you kind of got through them? Because I think when we go through difficult times in our life, we hear about post-traumatic growth, but not everyone does grow from difficult times. Some people do get held back through challenges, and it becomes a world that they just get sucked into this kind of, what's the right word I'm trying to find, almost a victim mindset, and they stay stuck in that place. But you're someone who's been able to grow and develop through trauma and difficult times. How have you been able to do that? Because I think that is quite inspiring for people to hear about.
I mean, as you say, it looks different for everybody, but I don't know. Sometimes I feel like I haven't, sometimes I'm like, yeah, that's still there, but I suppose for me, again, it's about the truth. Like I've come to realize that people will say, oh, you're a coach, Johnny. And I say, do you know what? I'm more though. I'm a truth seeker. And with every client I work with, it's about finding out what's true. It's about looking for that cognitive dissonance or that conflict, that thing that's being said, but not being done, whatever it is that's going on. And I'm looking for what's true. And I'm looking, you know, again, that starts to lean more in towards acceptance as well, you know, because you've got to accept something that potentially you don't want to be true. So I'm always looking for the truth. And I'm also trying to learn the lesson, you know, like there's a gatekeeper at every part of our life. You know, when you get to a certain position, there's always something there that just wants to test you that little bit more to make sure you want it, you know. And nothing was truer for me than the symbolism of climbing mountains, you know, and just realizing like, damn, how badly do you want to get to the top, Johnny? It's like, I really want to get to the top, you know, and realizing like it had to take away from me because the mountains don't care, man. They don't care if you're tired. They don't care if you're having a hard day. They don't care if you're cold. They don't care if you've got altitude sickness. Doesn't care if you get to the top. Doesn't care if you get to the bottom. Doesn't care. You know, it's on you. Like, deal with it. Like, this is the way it is. And it's like you really face yourself and you find out what's true about yourself. You know, around that time I was having them difficult times, I had something called a dissociative seizure. And like, I didn't choose that. You know, but what it taught me was how connected our mind and body is. Because when I had this seizure, I had it and then I woke up in hospital and there was lots going on and people were concerned and all these different things. And then I'd had a stressful event happen in my life and I was desperate to speak to a doctor because I was desperate to get out of the hospital. Typical blokes like, get me out of here. These are not my people. So I don't think it really works that way, Johnny. So I wanted to get out of the hospital and I got to speak to the doctor. And I told him, I said, you know, is this confidential? You know, do you have to write any of this down? He said, no. I said, okay. Well, I told him what happened. And he looked at me and he went, yeah, I think that's a rational reaction to an irrational situation. Basically, your body said, nope, we're not going to suppress this one, Johnny. We're not going to bottle this one up. We're not going to crack on. We're going to have this, you know. And that's what happened. I had this moment where I had this seizure. I've never had a seizure before, never had a seizure since. But there I was using my well-practiced behavior of being tough, being tough for everybody else. You know, I can't have my moment of emotion because my kids are here, my wife's here. Can't have my moment of emotion because my brother's going through some problems. I've got to keep it together. I've got to do this. What? I'm in hospital. How did that happen? Well, revert back to what you just said. You know, you're holding it all in, you know. So then I realized, you know, okay, this is not what emotional regulation is. It's not about denying the emotion or pretending it's not there or learning to do it differently. It's about having it. It's about having the emotions, about owning it. That's why I come up with the 4 stages of behavioral change with the awareness and the accountability and the acceptance and the action, because it's a process. Now the process can change, and that's why it's in general a principle, because I don't want to dictate that, oh, I'm not feeling acceptance. That's okay. You know, you don't have to. You know, everyone struggles with it differently. Everyone has acceptance differently. But, you know, realizing that if you are angry or you're having a difficult emotional experience and you're telling yourself you're not, oh dear. Because it's not going to go well, you know, because your body doesn't care about the lie you've told. That's for everyone else. It's not for your body. Your body knows what's going on. You know what's going on, you know, and you're going to have that experience. And that's what I did. I had a seizure, you know. And I said I've never had one since or before, you know. So what does that mean? It's a powerful thing.
The body keeps a score, doesn't it?
Does,
and you said that kind of mind to body connection, which is one that I think people talk about. But to really experience, I think that's what we're talking a lot about in this conversation now, is kind of like the body and the mind are one. And when your body's not working well or functioning well, it's going to affect your mind. And if your mind is struggling and you've gone through difficult times, that's also going to affect your body. And I've been doing a lot more study around kind of trauma and trying to understand that a little bit more, and looking at kind of Gabor Mate's work and looking at kind of the physiological stress that causes, because it's like the body holds it. And you talked about like releasing emotion earlier. I think physical well-being and mental well-being have to be kind of like one, kind of this sort of biopsychosocial model almost, really, where we're looking at all the components that make up a human being, and all these components that influence our health, our well-being, physical and psychological. And it's complex, isn't it? There's a lot going on. But I think as a coach, I'm trying to give kind of simple strategies, and it's amazing how you can see one area can knock onto another area. We chatted about relationships earlier, just by working on that area, how that can improve your physical health and your mental health or whatever. It's all so interconnected, isn't it, with the human body?
Yeah, I think emotions are messages. That's what I think. They are messages. I think they're telling us something. And again, might not want them to be true, so we might not listen, you know, but they're telling us something. Emotions are messages. And those messages are coming across loud and clear, and we can gaslight ourselves all day long. You know, I don't know if I mentioned this in the last time we spoke. Did I tell you about the client I worked through the anger with? There was one particular moment of anger, and they were struggling with addiction. That was their main struggle. But as we know, addiction's just pretty word for I don't know how to have my emotions, you know, in most cases. And we were doing well. But then we'd keep falling off at certain points, and I could see it was around anger, something around anger. There was always that word coming up. So one day I said to her, "I tell you what, meet me here." And they're like, "What's going on here?" I said, "Yeah, just meet me here. I think we got to deal with this anger." And we met up in a field, which I promised I had permission to use. And we were out of this field, and I had some boxing gloves. And being a former PT, I did a bit of safety stuff, taught them how to punch so they didn't break the wrist, because that would have been really helpful. Helicopter rescue, you know. So I did a bit of safety stuff, and then I got them punching. And I said, "Listen, I'm going to say, you know, I know a lot about this person." I said, "I'm going to say some stuff, and it's going to be upsetting to hear. Just know that there's a reason, and that you trust me, right?" And they're like, "Yeah." I said, "I mean it. I'm going to say some really hurtful things." And they're like, "Okay." So we're punching, bash, bash, bosh. And then I start saying some stuff, and they're like, "Oh, wow. Okay." And at first they're like, get a bit uncomfortable. And after a little while, I'm getting really horrible, and I'm saying some really nasty things, and they're punching. I said, keep punching. And I said, "Are you angry?" He said, "Yeah, I'm really angry. Like, I can't believe you said that." I said, "What are you angry about?" Anyway, cut a long story short, we get to the anger. What are you angry about? Anger creates clarity. Anger. I'm angry about this. Okay, why are you angry about this? What's going on? And you push it a bit further. And then you get to a point where you ask them, you say to them, "You're angry. You hate that this happened. You hate that happened. That person doesn't deserve this. What do you need?" And then she told me. And then she fell to the ground and she cried. And she said, "I didn't know I needed that. I didn't realize it was that simple." You know, and it was always simple. It's just that they're denying it to themselves. And that anger is a vessel for clarity. It will create clarity for you. You've never known an angry person confused, right? When someone's angry, they tell you exactly why. you know, but
it's very true.
You can do it to yourself, you know. And it was a risk. It was a risk, you know, but I felt like we'd tried the softer approaches, and it's like anything in coaching, right? You've got clients that, you know, you just got to tell them, like, this is how it is. You know, I'm sorry, but this is the truth. And they're like, right, I can accept that. You might say the same thing to another client, and it destroys them. So you have to understand them, and you have to be able to use the right language at the right time and in the right way. You know, and for that person, they were tough. They'd put up with a lot of, be careful when I say this, but they put up with a lot of death in their life, and it wasn't fair, you know, and lots of things had happened, and we needed to, you know, it's all right. Let's get angry. Let's talk about what we need. Let's get there. You can't have that conversation when everyone's nice and chill, right? You know, you got to get that emotion out. You got to get them tears, that anger, that rage, whatever, which is the anger getting out of control. But I'm going to try and control it, I hope, and not get beaten the crap out of in a field. Maybe it was me that needed helicopter rescue, but it's a powerful thing. Emotions are messages, and you just got to listen to them, because they'll tell you in the cold hard truth exactly what is wrong, you know.
It's so true, isn't it? When you're angry, you know exactly why. It took me back to when about 10 years ago, I had like a panic attack. And then after that, I had some anxiety for quite a while. And you know, you were talking about suppressing of emotions. And there was this time after that where I was convincing everyone else that I was fine. But I knew I wasn't fine. And you start to, in your own head, you're like, I'm trying to convince myself that I'm not. Well, that's almost like two entities, because you've got one part trying to convince the other part. And that was a real moment for me. I remember having a conversation with a good friend of mine, and how you can kid everyone, but you can't kid yourself. You can suppress it. But I knew when I was convincing other people I'm fine, I knew I wasn't.
To me, that's the actual definition of anxiety. That's my own personal belief, by the way. That's not written down anywhere as far as I know, but I believe that anxiety is the collection of lies that you keep telling yourself. You are lying to yourself, and you know you are.
I did know.
Yeah, you know you are, and you can't help it because you don't want to face the truth.
Yeah.
And it's all about truth, you know. Like, I believe that there are three things you can control. Your effort is something that you control. Your attitude is something you control, and the truth. Now, the truth you might avoid because there's an uncomfortable emotion somewhere, and someone's got to have it, and it means that you don't tell the truth because you don't like the way it feels, or you don't like the response that someone's going to give you or how they feel about it. So you avoid it by telling a lie. The problem is, it is a lie. And at some point, you're going to start building what we hope is truth. Oh, maybe they'll just get over it. No, they'll never get over it. And when they find out you've lied, it's going to come crashing down. It's like if I, another risky comment, but my wife asks me, do I look a certain way in this dress? And I tell a lie. If she then goes out and other people comment on it, she's going to blame me for it.
Johnny's in the shit again, isn't he?
Yeah. She's going to not talk to me all the way home. Why didn't you tell me this? Why didn't you tell me that? Now, she's never looked at orphan and dress. So I've never had to have that experience.
You mentioned needs, and there's a really good book called Lost Connections. It's a lot about depression, written by Johan Yari.
Love it. Yeah.
And he talks a lot about kind of unmet needs, unmet psychological needs. And the main three that come up are connection, value, and autonomy. And I feel like it's very easy to lose those things. Very easy to lose connection with the important people in your life. It's very easy to lose agency if we're not able to take responsibility for actions and behaviours. And it's very easy to lose sight of the value we offer the world and the value we have as an individual. When you hear those three words, Johnny, what kind of comes to your mind when you think about those kind of psychological kind of needs? I saw you nodding your head there. Is it a book that you're familiar with?
I haven't read it all. I've sort of extracted concepts from it, just because you can't read all the books, can you? You can try, but
yeah.
I
certainly can't.
Yeah, well, I listen to a lot of books now. I love that.
Yeah, Audible's a game changer.
Mate, I've trained to audiobooks. My wife thinks I'm bonkers. She's like, "How do you find the rage?" I said, "It depends what you're listening to." It really does.
But I love those kind of three kind of psychological needs.
Say them again.
So we've got connection.
Yeah.
We've got value. And we've got autonomy.
Oh, they're all so important, aren't they? They're all so important, and if you take them away from somebody, the life starts, doesn't it? Like the connection. Like I was talking to someone the other day about who had come out of a narcissistic relationship, and they basically what they were lying to themselves, but they were alluding to themselves that they missed the person. I said, no, you missed what they gave you. In their moments where they were kind, that's what you missed, and you can have that with anybody else. But what you're doing is you're misdiagnosing that as I miss the person. You don't miss the person. You can't. They were horrible to you. They were really horrible to you. But what you miss is the comfort of knowing that they can offer you that thing sometimes, and the risk that comes with finding it somewhere else. Because without risk there is no trust, right? So I can trust you, but I have to risk that because I don't know. And everybody out there is capable of abusing your trust, no matter who they are, under the right situation. So connection, value, obviously values are just, it's what we value, isn't it? No one wants to live a life of stuff they don't value. That sucks, and then what was the last one?
Autonomy.
So you can't do what you want to do.
Yeah,
you have no control.
It's feeling like you have a sense of choice in your life. And
yeah.
Obviously the book's geared around depression and trying to understand the multifaceted layers of depression.
Yeah.
And when people feel like they just don't have any control, they don't have any agency, they don't have any kind of internal locus of control, once they feel like that goes away, it can really pull people into a dark place.
I want you to think right now how it would feel in a situation when you feel helpless. Somebody in your life, touch wood, gets ill and there's nothing you can do about it. And you just have to watch them suffer and watch them get angry and watch them feel certain emotions. That's a horrible emotion. That's autonomy, right? You've got no autonomy in a situation. You can't do anything. You feel helpless. It's a primary emotion. Most people won't have that emotion. I don't want to have that emotion. A primary emotion is an emotion about an event. And it's such an intense, sensitive emotion that if we get the option to have one that's a bit easier, anger, which can be a secondary emotion, and the secondary emotion is the emotion about an emotion. So we have that emotion, right? Because it's easier than having helplessness, because I don't know what to do with helplessness. By definition, I can't do anything. But anger, yeah, I can throw stuff. I can say stuff. I can do stuff. It's got an energy to it. It makes me feel good, or something close to it. So yeah, that, the connection, the value, the autonomy, they're all important aspects of life that we must have, and like I said, if you couple that with effort, attitude, and the seeking of truth, then you mix all that together and you've got problems and solutions somewhere in there, I'm sure, That's just come to me. Actually. Right.
There you go. You got some notes, Johnny. I think with the autonomy as well, it's the ability to assess what you can control, whether that's your reactions to your emotions, whether that's certain behaviours, but also there's plenty of things in life that we can't control and that are out of our hands, i.e. other people's responses, other people's actions and behaviours. And you mentioned trust there. And when you form that connection with someone, you can't form deep connection without trust.
No.
But trust is developed through openness, honesty and vulnerability. And it's risky because you're risking getting hurt. You're putting your trust into that individual. You're putting maybe your heart and your love into that relationship. And part of love is giving someone the power to hurt you.
Well, it's interesting. I worked with a couple a long time ago, and there was adultery that happened. And it's really easy in that situation for the person that was cheated on to say, oh, you know, I trusted you and you broke my trust and rah. And I totally understand that, and it's completely rational. But what we came to was, what do you want? Do you want to resolve this situation? Do you want to stay together? Do you want to fix this? Right? Yes, we do. Right. Okay. So now you're both going to have to try to understand how this happened. Now, if someone cheats, that's terrible. They shouldn't do that. That's the wrong response. However, if you know this person and you trusted this person and you believe that you did, you won't like this, but there is a reason why they did it. Now, it's not a justification. It's a reason. If you want to get past this, you have to try and understand that reason without looking at it through the lens of your anger and your disappointment and your broken trust. And when you look at that and you say, okay, what did they get from this? Well, they got connection, right? They got deep connection. So why didn't they get that from you? Oh, because you were working too much. You were obsessed with your work and you were neglecting them and you weren't listening to them. Oh, they should just get over it. No, they shouldn't. You took away, there was a deal there, right? You both were going to give you something, you agreed to it, and then you took it away, and they needed that thing. They needed it, and they found it somewhere else. And a lot of the time in adultery between men and women, there's a trade-off. There's an emotional connection for a sexual gratification. So typically a man wants sex, a woman wants to be heard and seen and talked to and listened to and all them different things. And the guy's motivated, I suppose, to listen, you know, so they can get what they want. And that wasn't happening in that relationship for them. So there was a trade-off. So then what happens is a moment where one person has to go, I neglected your needs and you found it somewhere else. Ooh, that's difficult. That is painful, but it is true. And again, this is where we start to avoid the truth because you're angry. Well, you shouldn't have done that. Yeah, you shouldn't have. But then you shouldn't have done what you did too. Where are we at now? You know, which one's more important? You know,
because not what you're not doing there is justifying a behaviour.
No, it's not. It's unjustifiable.
Or blaming someone. Yeah. What you're doing is getting to a place of really unpeeling those layers, and getting deeper and understanding why something happened.
And it hurts so much that it's easy to go, no, I don't want to accept that. Well, I'm not asking, I'm not justifying it. I am not. What happened is wrong. But also what you did was wrong too. Because when you got together, you made promises to each other. You built trust with each other. And you broke that trust by dishonoring that, you know, this person said they were going to stay faithful. And this person said they were always going to be there to listen and connect and be there for you. And you wasn't there. And so they wasn't there, you know. It's complicated. You know, I'm not saying anything's right or wrong. I'm just saying if you really want to move through that, you have to understand it. And the level of admiration I had for that couple is off the chart, you know, because that was some difficult work, man. And there was a lot of times where we took a few steps back, but we got there in the end. And well, they got there in the end. I didn't do anything. I just listened.
I mean, relationships are so complex and messy, aren't they?
Yeah,
they are so
life.
Complex and messy, and they aren't black and white. And when you are going through a difficult time in a relationship, it's very easy to judge a behaviour in any context at surface level and go, that behaviour was right or wrong. That's my opinion. That's my assessment of that behaviour. It's not until we look a little bit deeper and we're able to open up some of these conversations that we can think, hang on, there was a build up to this behaviour. There was things that were going on in this relationship dynamic that wasn't right. That took time to break down, and it took time for things to crumble. They don't crumble over just one event. Things are going on for months, often years, before relationships really start to break down. And it's through looking back through, you know, I've gone through experience in the past which involved couples therapy. So that's something I've had personal experience with, and to be able to look at myself and go, what was my role in this?
Yeah, man,
because
it's
there's
a good
always,
question.
and it's always a role that I can look at going forward. Okay, I can't control that person's response or behaviours, but I can look at myself. I can think, what can I learn now? How can I grow from this bloody painful situation?
Such a good question.
What can I learn? How can I look at myself? It's very easy for me to sit here and talk about, and hard to practically do because it's painful. But to go, I'm a part of this as well. I'm a part of this relationship breaking down. It takes two people. It's always two people. But when you're in that emotional state, you're in that blame, you're in that anger place. It's all them. They've done this, they've done that. Okay, but what have you done?
Yeah. Well, if you could video it, the video of them committing adultery is going to be way harsher than you not listening, isn't it?
I mean, you're using that as an example. There could be lots of different. That's an
Yeah.
extreme example.
Oh,
There
yeah.
could be-
I'm not so sure. I'm just saying that, adultery is a hard one. Again, I put a stamp on it. I don't condone it. It's a terrible thing to do. However, if two people make a decision, it's like, which is hard, especially around the early times, the early part of it, when people find out and things like that, but ultimately it comes down to, well, what do you want to do? Do you feel so strongly about your relationship that you want to fix this? You want to move forward? And to a degree, that relationship comes to an end and a new one starts, because what's happening potentially as well is that your values have shifted and you've not acknowledged it. One of you wanted something when you were 19 and now you're 38, you don't anymore, but you're still doing it because it makes the other person happy. Well, speak up. Let's have a difficult conversation. No, I don't like difficult conversations. Okay, then you're going to have a difficult life. That's the way it's going to go. So it's complicated. The message, you nailed it. Life is complicated. It's messy. It's unpredictable. Things aren't linear. Things don't make sense. Emotions don't make sense. Emotions apply zero logic. Emotions just know how to do emotions really well. That's it. They don't apply logic to it. If you try and apply logic to an emotion, who dare? It's not going to go well, So yeah, it's hard, and that's why it's so good to have somebody else to help you organize your mind, someone you can talk to, an audience, so you can organize your mind and you can start put things in place and you can start to accept things. But you can't accept things until you say them, until you put them out there, until you put them in black and white almost, And then we talked about, the thought, the talking, and then the writing, writing letters to each other. I quite a lot of the time with clients, I get them to voice note me things, so that they can just let their thoughts go away with them. That's backfired on me. I've had a few long ones, pretty much a podcast, but it's that, to being honest with you, the message isn't for me. Quite often I'll say to them, listen to that message back. And they'll ask me a question and I go, so what do you think, Johnny? And my reply will be, listen to the message back. The answer's in the message. Someone will tell me, oh, I don't know what to do about this thing. I'll tell you what I want to do. I want to do this. Okay, well, you've just answered your question, because I've had people, and I'm sure you have as well. What should I do, Johnny? What would you do, Johnny? And my answer is, what do you want to hear me say right now? Because what you're doing is you're looking for me to put a stamp on it and validate it, but I'm not going to do that, because this is your life. And I don't want you to feel the repercussions of my decision, because this is your life. You need to make that decision yourself, and you need to be brave. You need to end that relationship. You need to change that job. You need to move that from that house, whatever it is. I had a difficult decision recently around my family, and we had to take our son out of school, and that was, man, it's still, there's moments where I'm like, was that the right decision? I don't know. But then when I see how much happier he is, because it's funny, as parents, you say, all I care about is my son's happiness, or all I care about is my child's happiness. But then you then go on to make a decision that makes them unhappy. So which is true, and that's where I had to stop and come back to it. And I go, this is as simple as that, isn't it? This isn't working, and this, maybe it's the wrong school, whatever it is, but now he's being homeschooled. And there was this moment where I realized how bad I'd let it get, or my wife and I had let it get, when he wasn't coming down for dinner and he was just hiding in his room and he was becoming more and more withdrawn. And then there was this moment where me and my wife were like grabbing each other's hand under the table, and he came and sat with us at the table. And I was like, oh my God, my son's coming back, we're getting our son back. And then over time, he's coming for dog walks with us, and he's coming back and he's rejoining life again, and it made me realize, damn, how bad did I let this get? I felt sorry. I wanted to say, I'm so sorry I let you down, but I didn't know, I didn't know. So it's difficult, making decisions is hard, but you have to make a decision, because avoiding decisions is just as hard.
I was talking to a client the other day, and we were just talking about how the fact the person always knows the answer.
Yeah,
They do have the answer. You know, I'm sure most of your work is guiding people and helping them get.
I don't
to
know
that
anything.
answer.
You know,
But they do have the answer.
they do.
And it's I certainly start to realize that the more I work with people, the more I work with the clients, they know what they want to do, and quite often they're in the action, and quite often they're aware. But drawing those three things together and not hiding behind the lie or trying to avoid the discomfort which draws them away from the answer. But it's so true, isn't it? You do know the answer.
Yeah, everybody does, man. I often say when someone presents me with a problem, they're also presenting me with the answer. They know what they want to do. They just want to explore it a little bit more. Like there's some stuff in life, decisions in life that are just ridiculously hard to make. And it makes perfect sense that you're avoiding making that decision. It totally makes sense. You know, you put together with that, 10 years worth of lying to yourself, and boy, it starts to become very challenging, So and that's why we've got to be compassionate, and that's why I don't jump in with what I think is the answer, because that's ridiculous. How do I know? I don't live your life. I don't have the people in your life. I don't have the situations. I don't have the history. I don't know all that stuff. And let's face it, with the best one in the world, we're all human beings. And when we speak what we believe is truth, we're also avoiding shame. I can sit and I can tell you a story, and then I see your eye wince. Okay, that's enough. I'm not going to tell you any more, because I can see that you're already thinking, wow, you did that. Judgment, which is natural, So now I'm only getting a version of the truth. Now I've got to make a decision for you based off of that version of the truth. No, thank you.
Yeah, it's I try, and one of the things that I've really tried to improve in the last few years through working and being close to James is trying to create as non-judgmental environment as I can for my clients, because I take it as a real coaching privilege when people feel they can open up to me and say anything. And it is things like work on your face and try and keep it as neutral as possible, so they feel they can just unload as much as possible with no judgment. And I'm not going to have the solution, but at least you feel you can open up. And even sometimes as a PT, for some clients, that is the only person they open up to, because I would say, if you've got a regular session with a PT, they are in your life, but they're not connected to anyone else in your life. Probably a bit like a hairdresser.
Yeah, like your barber.
Yeah, right? Where it's like, they feel they can trust you, and you're in an environment, hopefully, that you've built that they can talk to you. But there's no lines back to anyone they're talking about, because you're not involved in their day-to-day life.
Yeah.
And I really love it when a client opens up to me. I feel like, actually, hopefully I'm making more of a difference here than just your bench press has gone up. Although hopefully your bench press has gone up.
You're
right. Know what I mean?
You're right. And that's what evidently led me to what I do, and potentially what the same thing happened to you guys, But yeah, we all judge. And that for me, and again, this is just my spin on it. We all have judgments, man. We can pretend all day long that we don't judge, but we do.
Yeah.
When someone tells us something, we have a thought about it. So my practice is to observe that thought. Just observe it. Oh, interesting. When they say that makes me think of this, which is a judgment. But at the same time, what I'm also trying to do is make sure that when I have an intuition, because there is an aspect of intuition to coaching, no matter what anybody says, that I'm making sure that intuition is about them, not me.
Right.
So they're having an emotional experience which is stirring something in me. Now, is that me having some empathy for them, or is that me feeling an emotion triggered about me? Because that's going to make a difference to what I say next, or whether I choose to say nothing at all. It's an observation, isn't it? It's just constantly that battle, as you would have known from doing counselling, observing what's going on within you as much as what's going on within them, because that can quickly spiral out of control, and spiraling is something that I speak about it a lot. I speak about spiraling, it's okay to spiral. People say it's not, but it is, as long as you're spiraling in the right direction. You can spiral inwards towards the solution, or you can spiral outwards and make the problem bigger. You know what that looks like. If you're going out, it's anxiety. If you're going in, it's problem solving. It's looking at things with the truth, or looking at things through how it could be. Oh my gosh, this has happened. This means this means that. Oh, this is all getting really worse. I'm feeling overwhelmed. I'm just going to bury my head in the sand. Or you go in and you go, actually, so-and-so's done this too. And actually, it's not really that bad. And actually, it's quite funny now I think about it. And you're starting to move towards a solution. Only they can do that.
Yeah.
Not you.
Yeah.
Imagine you've got friends that we've all got them. You tell them something horrendous has happened, and then they tell you how much worse it could be. And you're like, whoa, you're really unhelpful. You know,
well, at least it's not this, mate.
Okay, cheers, mate. I heard he did that to the last girl. It's like, wait, what's going on? It's like, it's crazy. It's madness.
I think when you're dealing with people, there's that natural, we had in psychology, you have transference and counter-transference.
Of course.
Essentially what that is saying is no one is a blank slate.
No.
So what you're talking about there is we all have judgments. To hold someone in positive regards, to have this kind of unconditional positive regards, it's something Carl Rogers talked a lot about, is essentially just checking yourself in, going, oh, there's that judgment come up because that's brought something up in me based from my previous experiences, my background, my own personal triggers. Let's be aware of that, and let's try and, especially in a professional setting, try and be aware of not letting that cloud the conversation more than what it could potentially do. And that awareness is really key, because it's something we all do in life. We're doing it now in this room. We're all transferring stuff constantly, and it's just going, if you say something, what is that bringing up in me? I was bringing something about my previous stuff.
That's conversation.
That's coming up. That's conversation, which is really impactful. But also it's having the awareness to go, am I just chucking all of my stuff at Johnny based upon my triggers and my stuff, or am I actually really listening to what Johnny has to say? Am I putting myself in Johnny's shoes and what's going on with Johnny's words and Johnny's experiences? Or am I just hearing something and going, oh, yeah, this is what I want to say based upon my stuff? And I think that can, as I've learned that as I've got older, it's really helped me, not just as a coach, but in my personal relationships. Like Dan might say something, it might bring something up in me. And sometimes I'll just be like, okay, you can hear this, Dan, because I've got something to say. And sometimes I'll be like, actually, now's not the moment. This is about Dan. This is about his stuff. This is not a time for me to bring my stuff in. Just bookmark it in. And feel that's a really valuable skill for everyone. And again, if anyone's gone through any kind of counselling based courses, it's something that they talk a lot about for a valuable reason.
Yeah, I mean, you know, like I said, right in my book, I've that whole thing where I say like effort, attitude, and truth. I'm playing with it as being EAT principles because of the way it's spelled. See, But again, it comes down to that, like that behavior, right? So that you put the effort into presenting the right attitude through the lens of truth. So when somebody's telling you something like that, you know, and you feel in the judgment, stop trying to take the judgment away, because you're not going to. It's there. Just like you're feeling an emotion, you can't take it away. You know, what matters is what you do next. You know, so you have to put the effort in to acknowledge it. So I'm having that judgment, to then influence your attitude towards making sure that whatever you say next is true. You know, and that's helpful. I think that's helpful, because you don't have to always contribute to everything that happens. Sometimes you just gotta let it play out the way it is. You know, that person you might see someone leaning towards the flame, and you're like, oh, this is gonna hurt, but they got to touch that bugger, aren't they? Yeah. They've done this 5 times now, and I've told them don't touch the flame, but they're gonna touch the flame. Cool, let's see what happens next.
Because that's where they can learn.
Yeah,
you're watching someone you care about, and you're trying to help or guide or just be there for, as you alluded to earlier. Watching someone suffer, is, especially when it's someone you really care about, is more painful than yourself suffering.
Your children.
Yeah, your children is the worst thing. But you realise that, you know, being a father myself, like my daughter's going to need to go through some suffering in her life to grow and develop, and that is, as a parent, your default is I want to take anything challenging away from her. I don't want anything to harm my little girl, but she's going to go through some difficulties, and I'm going to be there to support her and guide her and provide her safety. But that's not going to come at the cost of her having to build resilience through difficult stuff in life. And actually, for me, taking all the difficulties away from her, actually just going to create more vulnerability, and in turn, create a harder life for her. And actually, the more resilient we become, the more we learn through pain and suffering and things you talked about today, the better the life we can have.
There's a chapter in Jordan Peterson's book about that. And he talks about, he uses the analogy of Snow White. No, not Snow White. Is it Sleeping Beauty? Sleeping Beauty, and how like her parents protected her from everything, to the point where she was so naive that she pricked her finger and ended up, you know. And it's about, that's life. If you protect a child from absolutely everything that happens, you're taking away them moments of vulnerability where learning occurs, you know. And you just walk through life naive, don't you? You know, I had a friend once. I won't say his name, but we were in London, and I nipped into a pub to go to a loo, and I came out and he'd been mugged. And I said, what happened? He said, this guy said to me, come here, I've got something to show you in this alley. And I was like, and you went down there? He's like, yeah, I wondered what it was. I was like, dude, we need to talk, man. I almost stopped short of saying you deserve to get mugged. You know,
you had it coming, mate.
It's like, come on, man. I couldn't believe it. I thought he was joking. He wasn't. I was paying for his drinks.
It's a good example. It's a good example of learning through.
Yeah.
You know, I've done things in my past. I look back, and go, how the hell did I get myself in that situation? But actually, it's only from that situation that I learned not to be so bloody naive.
But
that's what growth is about. And I think as long as we've got an environment where we've got good people around us, and we create an environment with good people, so we feel like we're going back into safety to go, look, hands up, I made a mistake there. I've been struggling here. I've been suffering here. But you're not going back to a place of feeling lonely and disconnected, because that's where we really start to get. You talk about like this downward spiral or spiraling inwards. I think that's when we really start to spiral inwards, where we've got some difficulty, we've got some pain, we've got some suffering, and we're just with ourselves, with our own thoughts, and we're just suffering more and more and more, going in and in and in, rather than going, you know what, I'm struggling right now. I need some tools and strategies to move forward. Maybe it's a coach, maybe it's a therapist, maybe it's a friend, maybe it's a sound bath, whatever, all the things that I've spoken about on the podcast previously. Maybe just reading a personal development book, whatever it needs to be. Maybe just a meditation, do some exercise. The lists are endless. But we need something to help navigate us forward. You ultimately talk about action at the end of the day. All this stuff, we need some action to be able to move forward. And it's when we stay stuck in a place of where we feel like we can't act, which is when we really start to stay stuck in that place of suffering. Suffering's fine. It's when we just can't move forward from it, and it gets deeper and deeper. And this is where we talk about mental health really taking a really deeper dark side to it, where people just can't find a way out. It's like, you know, when you're suffering, you feel you've been buried, and sometimes it can actually be the fact you've been planted and you can grow into something amazing. But some people stay in that buried state because they can't find a way out of the darkness.
Well, that buried means that you're dead, and the planted means you're about to grow and nurture yourself, doesn't it? You know, that's why I love that quote. It's beautiful, and it works. And I actually ironically said it to a client the other day, you know, because they were feeling really, really hard about something, and it was challenging. And there's a lot of people out there that deny who they are, and they try it, and they wonder why they've got an addiction. You know, because they're leaning into their addiction because it's helping them, you know, and I've said it a lot of time on podcasts, and I've got a lot of flack for it, but those addictions are useful. I shared a story on another podcast where I said about how from 8 years old, pretty much, I wanted to take my own life. I was suicidal, but then I found alcohol, and it kept me on this planet, you know. My therapist said, congratulations for finding a way to stay alive. Is that an ideal scenario? No, but that's not what life gives you, is it? Yeah. You know, we're always trying to work through it all the time, you know, and we go back to what we said before. It's messy, it's complicated, and it's unpredictable. And we're just trying to find a way to work through it. And that person, now we've got social media, so we've got all these examples of how people are living life perfectly, but we've all worked with some of these people, and that's not what's going on behind the curtain. Yeah. There's chaos behind the curtain, you know, and that's okay too, you know. So we're all trying the best. Is the truth.
Just on a slightly different track, how have you found because your following's grown quite quickly, hasn't it?
Yeah.
In the last few years. How have you found that? Have you found any anxiety or stress around?
Absolutely terrifying.
Yeah, like almost everything you say or do, because now you are seen and you're followed. And is that something that's really had to change in the way you see things?
It was a real point of self-development for me. Okay, maybe I didn't believe this was actually going to work, because now it's working. I had this thing happen to me. I was in a cafe, right? This is true. It's so cringy, but it's true. Right, I was in a cafe, and I was with my family and the grandparents and all that, and they're all sat outside, and I said, I'll go and get the order, right? So I was standing in the queue, and there was this lady, and she kept going like this. And I was like, and I was like, looking, thinking, what's going on? This is mad. Anyway, as I got closer to her, she sort of looked over me, and it became like, someone say something. What's happening? And she said to me, I'm so sorry. I know I'm staring at you, but, you know, I follow you on social and I listen to your podcast. I think what you're doing is amazing. I felt sick. I couldn't get out of there quick enough. And I was like, wow, this is an interesting reaction. What's going on here? And it's like, again, I suppose in some way it speaks to the fact that I don't do it for that. This is a byproduct that you become well known. And it occurred to me, I never stopped to go, well, do you want that? Do you want that? You know, and I don't know. I still haven't really got to the answer. I suppose in some way I do, because then I can get what I feel are important messages out there. But do I want the attention and all the other stuff that comes with it? not sure I can answer that question. I certainly didn't do it for that, so I don't know what's going to happen, you know. But again, this is where I have to lean into that anxiety and say, well, you don't know the answer. Well, I want to know the answer. You don't know the answer. Stop it. You know, stop it. You know, there's that thing we were saying about anxiety. I could now build a beautiful lie and buy into that, but I have to try my best not to, you know. So, and we move on.
Because there's that difference, isn't it, when you see people maybe wanting to be famous? So they go out wanting to be well known, let's say.
Yeah.
But actually, that was never your intention. So
No.
actually, as that comes as, say, maybe a consequence of it and how you deal with that. That's why I was interested, because you mentioned it a little bit earlier on as well.
The day it broke 10K, I actually felt sick.
Oh, really?
I did. Like, I picked up my phone and there was a ridiculous amount of follows and I actually threw it. And I was just like, my wife was like, what's the matter with you? I was like, nothing. Couldn't even talk about it. Shut up. Don't want to talk. I didn't know what to do. It wasn't something I was like, I wasn't ready for it. Or I don't know, are you ever ready for it? And really, does it matter? And I've got to a point now where it's not that, it honestly isn't that it doesn't matter. I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is that's not important. That what's important is that, you know, I get messages from people. Like I got a message from someone the other day and they'd heard me on a podcast and they said, I think you've just saved my life. And I'm like, what? I've got, you know, what? That's an incredible amount of responsibility, you know, and what does that mean? You know, so, but thank God, you know, thank God, you know. And I had a friend a little while ago who messaged me. I have to be careful because this can sometimes make me emotional, but I tell a story sometimes on my when I'm on podcasts about why you should never give up. And did I tell it with you guys last time? No, I mean when I was 17 years old, I left the family home due to an event that happened, and me and my dad had butted up against each other, and my mum and I decided that, look, this isn't going to get any better, right? This is probably going to happen again, and one of us is going to make a bad choice one day, you know? So I moved out, and I was on my own, and I had about 4 jobs, whatever, and I had no money. I had no gas, and I didn't even have £5 to put on the gas meter. And I was walking back from work about 11:30, and I was crying my eyes out. And I'm not saying I was suicidal, but I definitely was having a, what? 17? Is this really what life is like? Is it really this hard? Like, I'm not sure I'm up for this. And I was walking along in this utter turmoil, knowing I'm going back to a cold house and no way of cooking any food. Couldn't get a takeaway, don't have any money, you know, working all of the hours under the sun, no money. Doing the papers in the morning at WH Smith, you know, working in the bars in the day, bringing in the deliveries at Wilkinson's at night, no money. I get round the corner, on the floor is £20. And I'm like, what the? 20 quid, what is going on here? And what it taught me, right, was never give up, because that moment before you give up, you could find your version of that £20. And then the reason that makes me emotional is because I had a friend, I told that for the first time on a podcast a couple of years ago. And a friend from childhood, when it used to be really violent at home, his mum, who's now passed away from cancer, took me in sometimes even patched me up. And he was going through something really difficult, and he saw that video and it stopped him from taking his life. And that was difficult to hear. That was really difficult to hear. It does make me feel emotional, because he's a good guy, you know, and, you know, he felt suicidal in that moment. And one of my videos helped him for that moment stay in the game. And then I reflect back and think, well, your mum did the same for me, you know? So it's powerful, you know?
I was just going to say, that's the word that came to me, powerful.
Yeah, it's very powerful. Very powerful.
It's that ability, isn't it, just to take that one step forward in a really difficult time where you feel like there isn't a step forward. Like, what's the smallest thing I can do today?
Oh, sometimes it has to be so small.
So small. Just, can I get out of bed? Can I just can I get through the doors of the gym? Just be there. Can I just meet this person? Whatever, something so small. Can I just take that one step just to keep going? And that can be really hard when you're in a dark place. It's
like that Ricky Gervais show, isn't it? The one where his wife passes away of cancer and he stays alive because someone's got to feed the dog. It's just like, man. Do you know what I mean? That's life though, isn't it?
Yeah,
that simple action. Who's to say that? Like, he stayed alive. I know it's a show, but in principle, you get it. Someone's got to feed the dog. You know, mental.
It's afterlife. It's afterlife.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, afterlife.
It's very good. There's a lot of good kind of messages, isn't there, around kind of mental health woven into into that series.
Yeah. I mean, that series, I mean, it's one of them shows, isn't it? How can 1 minute you be laughing your head off and the next minute you're wanting to cry your eyes out? It's absolute, in some regards, genius, that show. Really
I was actually going to say, because the emotional roller coaster that show can take you on, and his acting can take you on.
Yeah.
It's incredible.
It's amazing. And it's a real thing. And this is it. You know, one of the things that's shifted in me since the follower count went up and all that is it's really made me clarify, well, okay, people are listening now. What do you want to say? And for me, it's not about, and I don't mean this in a disrespectful way, but, you know, we're now in a space where people are dealing with real life problems and they're looking for real life solutions. Now, I don't offer solutions, I offer perspective, storytelling, whatever. It's quite often education. But what am I trying to say? Well, I'm not going to recommend cold water swimming to someone who's depressed, because now they're just going to be depressed and cold. You know, so it's just like, it's not helpful. You know, I'm not saying anything against cold water swimming. It has its place. But what I'm saying is, when you're in a really dark place and you're so desperate for a solution and you hear that your friend goes cold water swimming and that's really helped them, it wasn't just the cold water swimming. That was part of something, of many things, most likely. You know, so it's about like, gosh, this person's putting hope, all their hopes, and really outsourcing their happiness and thinking, yeah, this cold water swimming is going to fix me. Oh, it didn't. You know, so it's about, okay, now what we need to get used to is the idea that this is difficult, and that emotion that you're feeling, you're not going to like this, but maybe that is the right emotion. Is it wrong to feel, to cry when something sad happens? Is it wrong to laugh when something's funny? No. So then why are you gaslighting yourself and telling yourself you shouldn't feel like this? You know, what's the message you're ignoring? What's going on? You know, let's lean into it. But I don't want that to be true. Okay, but it is though.
Yeah.
And when you're ready to look at it, I'm here. You know, you know, that's the way it goes, I suppose.
You can see kind of when you're online that it's hard to sift through sometimes for people what's authentic and what's real, and what's fake and what's just trying to get you to buy something.
Yeah.
And I think one reason that I've gravitated towards you as a person, getting to know you, Johnny, over the last kind of couple of years now, the catch-ups we've had outside of the podcast and just listening to your content, is the realness, the authenticity. It feels to me like it comes across with real, genuine passion. And finding that in this modern world is getting harder and harder, because less people are sitting around having these conversations. It's so, me and Dan have had these chats before where everything is, and we all feel guilty for it, judging something from the outside, and social media is all about the outside. When we make assumptions of how people are thinking or what's going on with them, and then we make mistakes, don't we? We do start to trust people, and we do start to try and go down certain paths, and we realise actually this wasn't right for me, or this wasn't the right person. It's a confusing world. I think that's the point I'm trying to make. I have empathy for everyone now, trying to form connections and trust in people, especially online.
Yeah,
it can be really hard.
It can be, man. And you know, I've had my share of disappointments. You know, I've put coaches on pedestals or public figures on pedestals and then met them and been disappointed, you know. And I've had opportunities where people have said, hey, you know, you can, it sounds really dramatic, but you can get a seat at this table, but then there's a compromise. And I'm like, nah, I'm not going to do it. You know, it doesn't mean that much to me to be famous. It doesn't mean that much to me to have your version of success. I'm not that interested in that. What I'm interested in is, I have been through some horrendously horrible things. And if I can stop other people from even having a small degree of those things happen to them through sharing my experiences, thank you, because it means it was worth it. You know, it means it was worth it, you know, go through those things. And, you know, someone once said to me, you know, you went through that because you were tough enough. And I'm like, And I very often have conversations with the universe and say, really, did it have to be that savage? You know, but it is what it is, you know, and, you know, I'm still here, and I am happy. I do have a good life. I've got so many things going on. I have problems like everybody else does, but, you know, what I have come to is that, you know, the Taoist farmer story where we'll see. Yeah. I adopt that so much now. Another thing I adopt is, I think it's Keanu Reeves said, I've got to a stage in life now where if you tell me that 5 + 5 = 6, you're right. Have fun with that. I love that quote because it's true. I had somebody. I was on a panel a little while ago, and they decided that they were going to take it upon themselves to tell me quite aggressively and quite rudely that I was wrong about something, and I didn't respond because to me it felt more like a statement than a question. So I just didn't say anything. And they said, "Have you got nothing to say?" And I said, "Well, I think it's possible that you're making the assumption that I'm here to be right or here to convince you that I'm really smart, but I'm not. I'm not interested in being right or smart. I'm interested in the truth. So if you have got something to tell me that's going to change my belief of what I think is true, I'll listen. And if it makes more sense, then I'll adapt my version of the truth and fill your boots. If you want to take credit for it, great, go for it. I'm not here to take credit for anything. I'm just here to tell you what I've learned. And if that's helpful, cool. If it's not, that's also cool, and the conversation changed because I'm not going to argue with you. I'm not going to argue with you about what version of the truth is true. It's just, what's the point in that, because something that can be unhelpful to one person can be helpful to somebody else, It's like what I often say, negative and positive. They're not words that I use often because once you label something negative in every context, it's then negative, but that can't be true because sometimes things can be helpful when to some people it can be unhelpful. So we move on.
It's an incredible response because so many people in that sort of environment, especially if you're on a panel, can feel attacked, and in doing that you automatically go defensive. But just to be able to respond like that in a calm, cool, and collected way,
because it's
so
real.
much better for conversation.
No, but it's real. Like it's not. I don't go around the world pretending to be who I am. I am who I am, flaws and all. And I'm really honestly not trying to be right. I'm not trying to be the smartest person in the room. I was speaking to a friend of mine who's an author, and he said, no matter what you do, you'll write a book, and in 5 years' time, you won't believe anything you wrote. And I'm like, great. So it's just like, it is. This is life. We learn, and we think something's true, and then later on, science goes, actually, we were wrong about that, and this is now true.
I've seen a few of them over a PT career.
You do, don't you?
Right. So and actually, I take one of James's lines, which is, "This is to the best of our knowledge right now."
Yeah.
Because I've been too dogmatic in the past about the current research or science, and then about 3 or 4 years later, I've still got the same client, and you have to sort of climb back down. So it's led me to be open-minded, but that learning that even in my little sector has made me more open-minded about everything. Because I'm like, if it's happening in my little world, it must be happening everywhere.
Well, you see it with Ben Carpenter, you see it with James Smith, you see it with Lane Norton. And you see how they must spend an incredible amount of time just arguing with people, and I think some of their responses are brilliant, Like I watched somebody on James Smith he made a video and someone passionately disagreed with him, right? Wrote this really, really, really long comment about why he was wrong on all these things. And James Smith replied with, "Cool, bro." I just thought that must have annoyed him so much. I just thought
it's a great response.
It's brilliant. He just went, "Cool, bro." I was just like, that's brilliant. That really is funny.
I suppose part of growth and develop is changing your opinions and stuff, isn't
it?
Like if you think exactly the same in 5 or 10 years' time as you do now, has there been any growth? It's again, like we said at the beginning of a conversation, it's been to let go of stuff and let go of ideas. Okay, I was really fixed at like this needed to look like this. I've learned more, I've read more, I've had more life experience, and some of my opinions and some of my ways of viewing the world and viewing myself have evolved and changed, and they will hopefully continue to do that. But I can only do that if I kind of have some humility in my opinions, let go of some of my ego, and try to be open-minded. And that could be really hard. It's something I've really struggled with. Definitely having my background of having this is right, this is wrong, this is good, this is bad. And as you alluded to about behaviours, like I think it's useful to go, is this behaviour serving you or not? Is it helpful or not? Maybe in the moment it's helpful. Is it helpful towards your values and your goals? And those answers might look very different now. I might have a few beers this weekend and feel really good, but actually in 3 years' time go, actually in that context that was unhelpful. So rather than judging that behaviour, look at what's going on around that behaviour. And as I grow and develop, I'm able to maybe be a bit more wiser in how I reflect in my own decisions and behaviours, and also with others. That's all part of personal growth.
It's been one of the hardest things that I've had to come up against whilst writing my book, is about checking myself on the truth and also coming up with things that people can find helpful without telling them what they should do. Because people want to read a book because they want some helpful information, right? But this is why I came up with something, and I haven't spoken about it on podcasts yet, but I come up with something called the MADE principles. And first and foremost, they're principles for a reason. It's because they are areas of your life that if you look into, you will find information that's helpful. But I'm not going to tell you how to do it. I'm just going to tell you, if you look into this, you're gonna get something helpful. And the reason they're called the MADE principles is because it's an acronym. I think they call it an acronym. Yeah, and it's morals, ambitions, drivers, and environments. Now, I believe that if you look into those 4 areas, you will find very helpful information that will help you build the person that you are, you know. And it's not about learning new things, it's about getting back in touch with what's already there. So for your morals, you must look into your core values, both your means values and your ends values. You also got to look at your growth beliefs and your limiting beliefs and explore them, you know, and see what happens. Then you got to look at your ambitions. Like, what do you want? No. What do you really want? You know, what do you really want? Let's filter out that noise and let's figure out what you really want. Oh, but that sounds like this. Yeah, maybe to some people, but it's true, right? Yeah, good. Now we're dealing with the truth. And then there's your drivers. Why do you want that? What is it about that drives you? You know, we've all had it. We've all had the client. I think I said it last time. What's driving you to lose weight? I hate myself. Great. So when it gets really hard, and it will, because all goals do, your motivation is I hate myself. Good luck with that. You know, so let's get them drivers nice and clear. Let's get them to be helpful, not unhelpful. And then lastly, your environment. If your environment is cueing you back to old behavior, then guess what? Old behavior. You know, so you got to look into those morals, those ambitions, those drivers, and their environments. And I talk in depthly about it as principles. You know, these are things that I have found. I'm not saying these are the right way to do it. I'm saying this is what I have found. And, you know, if you look into those areas, you will discover information about yourself. Whether you like it or not, it's a whole different thing. But it should be true, I hope. You know,
I think that's the great thing about principles, isn't it? You're not telling everyone you should do this, you should do that. You're just, again, helping guide people based upon principles. And a part of those principles is, as you're saying there, it's like, what's really important to you? What do you really care about and why? Really, and spend some time asking that question. I think it's a really valuable question. You talk a lot about, Johnny, questions. You get answers from quality questions, and actually your job as a coach is to ask questions and find out about someone rather than give solutions.
Oh, a lot of the time.
And I feel a great question is, what is most important to you? What do you truly care about and why?
Yeah, we've all, again, part of that lying narrative that we sell ourselves. We've got all these. I love it when someone delivers a statement to me or a sentence to me, and I've heard it before, and I'm like, that's really well practiced, that, isn't it? How true is it? and watch the defense then. Watch the aggressive defense of this thing that they want to be true that isn't, you know? So this is where we find out what we really want, you know? And I worked with someone a little while ago who turned out to be gay, and they wondered why they had an addiction. You know, the whole life they've been gay, and now they've come to terms with that. And it's like, okay, so we didn't have a problem with addiction at all, did we? We just didn't love the life we were living. And the only way that made it tolerable is through this thing that we do. You know, it's different for everybody, you know, the same solutions, you know, and I suppose in a way, as I think about it, my book's just a collection of problems. It's like, good luck with that. It's going to be a fun read. You know,
I think part of the things you're saying there as well is linked into the foundational needs, this foundational psychological needs we chatted about earlier, which is seeing your own value as well, like seeing the value that you're standing on. I talk quite a lot about it, but I don't think people truly reflect on that. And you can see it day to day with how you're getting compliments from people. It's a compliment to me and Dan that you're here. If you thought us two were complete idiots, you wouldn't be here today. Actually, do you know what I mean? So that's an indirect compliment, you know, and so we're getting compliments about who we are all the time. And we have to be able to see that ourselves rather than waiting for validation. Yeah. Johnny, you need to tell me that I'm amazing and handsome and a perfect person. No, you don't. I know that.
Legend.
But you know, jokes apart, it's without being narcissistic, of course. It's
too late.
Yeah, too late. I am a complete narcissist. If anyone hasn't realised that about me, but I'm someone who struggled a lot growing up with my confidence. Struggled a lot with my self-worth. struggled a lot making connection. I don't think there's an area of my life I didn't struggle with. It was just constant struggle in everything, from my body to learning to relationships, every area. And it's a really, really difficult thing for me to start to navigate my own worth. I felt like I had no worth. And when I got to the depth of why I was really struggling, that's why, because I didn't feel worthy as a person. I felt like I had nothing to offer the world. And when we can start to look at ourselves and go, you know what, I do have something to offer. I have got these skills and these strengths. It's a real life changer for people, but it's sometimes really hard to see.
Our morals are our standards, and quite often we measure ourselves against other people's standards. Well, we're never going to measure up, are we? You know, like, it's only when you realize, you know, like, I think I put it out on my social today, it's like we have that voice in our head and we're the ones listening. So maybe it's not other people's opinions and validations we're looking for, maybe it's our own. But then we're taught to not trust that, right? Because there's always someone that knows better than us. There's always someone older than us or wiser than us or whatever. None of that matters. You know, you make the decisions that you make at the time with the knowledge that you got, like you said, like you both said earlier. And sometimes there's a really meaningful mistake that you can learn from, and sometimes you nail it, you know. But we celebrate the nailing it bit and we put it all over social media. When we make a mistake, we just hope no one noticed.
Yeah, without question.
you know, so we don't do it. You know, I say it all the time as part of a presentation that I do. And I say, put your hands up if you've been in a blazing row with your missus or your partner and you've stopped to take a selfie. Because you didn't, did you? Like, you know, you don't put those moments up, but we all have them. We all have them, you know. I've had so many people whom, you know, even now it can happen, I suppose, but some people that come to me have got really big companies and you think they've got it all worked out. And then you get in there and you hear this and you hear that and you're like, wow, this is all going on here. And it's interesting, right? Because it's the same for everybody. It's just some people are better caretakers than others, you know. It is what it is.
The book Shoe Dog did that for me, you know, Phil Knight, who's the creator of Nike. And you just imagine a massive corporation like that. It was all planned to the nth degree. And you read the book and you realise it wasn't. He didn't even come up with the name of it until the night before. And the swoosh, he didn't even want. But he had to send the product off. Yeah. And you learn that from the book and you realise even that massive corporation and what it's turned into wasn't planned to the nth degree. Like, you just think all these people are super on top of everything they do. And like I say, you meet some of them. We have some clients like that, and you realise it's not always what it quite seems, or
it's completely the opposite.
It's not. Yeah, exactly. It's almost it's chaos sometimes.
No, it is. And actually, that I didn't know that, and I haven't read that book, but that is what I see all of the time. The more successful something is, the more it. Some people, I'm just like, you make me anxious. You have no control over this thing at all. And they're like, yeah, it's wild, right? And I'm like, oh, no, surrender. But then you've got to stop and think, well, that is how it is, isn't it? Like, I came to conclusion through a lot of things that have happened to me that I take a significant amount of comfort from knowing that I am never in control. So my job is to just accept that. And as soon as I find myself thinking, oh, I might have control here, or I think this might happen, whoa. Like, I had an opportunity come up a little while ago, and just think if I should say this or not. And the word Netflix got thrown around, you know, and I was like, whoa, this is, you know, and then I was like, you know, my wife said to me, this is amazing, this is that. And I said, we'll see. I had to come back to that Terrace Farmer. We'll see what happens. And lo and behold, nothing's happened yet. But then who's to say it won't in the future? I don't know. And this is the point. I don't know. And I'm not in control. We'll see. You know, it's just life, man. I was working with someone the other day and they were saying, since they've given up alcohol, I don't know who I am anymore. And I said, imagine that's a mountain of who am I? Yeah, you're at the bottom of the mountain and you've got to climb to the top. But what you're not realizing is that to get to the top, you have to climb the mountain. Right now, you're climbing the mountain of who am I? You're in the process of learning who you are. Enjoy it. Find out who you are. Make mistakes. Work out what you like and don't like. Enjoy it. This is you finding out who you are. But your anxiety is telling you should already know that. Why? And you throw in there that we're always changing. So what are we doing here? You know,
we love certainty and we love expected outcomes as human beings. And as soon as we start to entertain and accept uncertainty and accept that no outcome is ever guaranteed.
No.
And the more we go, oh God, I should be here by now. I should have had this. This shouldn't have happened. That's basically saying life hasn't gone according to my expectations, and it won't.
Exactly that.
Life will not go according to your expectations. So the more you wrestle with that, the more you're going to create more suffering for yourself. And as we've alluded to today, suffering's guaranteed in life.
Yeah,
why create even more suffering? Why not go, look, life is uncertain, and I don't know what's around the corner, but what I do know is I can take this one step forward today. I do know that I can have this conversation with Johnny, and I can do this tomorrow, and I can be the best person I can be. And that will always lead to some sort of positive path. But where that path ends up is always unpredictable. And to be able to accept that psychologically fully is sometimes quite difficult, but really important for our own mental well-being.
Well, I'm always putting my effort into the attitude so that I can see the truth, man. This is what I'm trying to do. You know, you could take that, what you said about Nike, and we could sit there with the Nike guy and you can go, you're doing it all wrong. Like, you should have things organized. You should do all this. He's got Nike though, right?
Yeah,
it's like Eddie Hall. You look at his deadlift, right? It's like, we don't teach it that way, but can you deny that he's the strongest guy? like no, he's, you know. So it's looking at that imperfection perfectly and realizing that, you know, there's always outliers, there's always exceptions to rules. People want to put things in systems, models, all these things, but they all work for a lot of people, but it won't work from probably far more people than it does. And that's why I try to stay away from it and go with principles, because, you know, at no point do I want to take responsibility for someone else's life. That's not fair to them or me, you know.
Right, we are at time.
So Johnny, I just want to say,
hour, but
Johnny, thanks for coming on today. It's been, as always, a fantastic conversation that we could have had for a few more hours.
Yeah.
So we did different paths. We
probably will, right?
Could have gone down, and we probably will do after this as we go out for a bit of food. But yeah, I just want to say that, you know, on a personal level, it's been really nice getting to know you over this last couple of years and finding someone who I can have like-minded conversations with and form a good connection with, because it can be hard, as we've alluded today, as you grow and develop. Finding those like-minded people is difficult, but if you can be your authentic self, you can find those people who you can really gravitate towards. And for me, that's what life's all about.
Yeah, listen, I feel exactly the same way about you both. I was really excited about coming here today. Having had the conversation with you last time, I thought it's going to be a great day, you know, and I'm looking forward to it, you know.
Well, it's my favourite Zoom one. It's my favourite because I'm not a massive fan of Zoom for podcasts. As in, I think they're good, but I love getting in a room with people. But with your one, I thoroughly enjoyed the Zoom one. It felt like we're in a room with you.
It was fun.
It was really cool. So it was great to meet you in person. But yeah, I wish we could go on for another hour, but we can't. So thank you for coming on, Johnny, and we will catch you next week.